So that was your fertility at 19. This is your fertility right about now.
Honey, you are going to be the big 3-5 next month. And you know what they all say about that.
Maybe be open to different types of men, broaden your horizons.
Just want somebody to love me. Then maybe we'll commit and create new life together. Why am I starting to feel like I'm completely crazy to want that?
I think we're done.
Hello and welcome to this wonderful conversation. My name is Amanda Salazar. I am the head of programming and acquisitions at Argo, and I am so excited to be joined by these incredible guests today to talk about the visual effects process with the short film Freeze. So I'd first like to introduce the writer, director, and producer, Maya Albanese. Welcome, Maya. Thanks for joining us.
For having all of us.
And don't worry, I haven't forgotten the rest of you. I'm just going to start with some questions for Maya first and then kind of bring on the rest of the team. So Maya, could you first, I know you've done, not just this film, but many other films. I would just first like to hear about kind of your experience with working with visual effects and visual effects teams. Like, have you used them before in your other work, and kind of how comfortable you are as a filmmaker with this part of the filmmaking process?
Well, I've done a lot of VFX and some animation in my commercial directing career. But Freeze was the first film I've gotten to make, I would say, that had highly imaginative visual effects that came, that were my original ideas versus something I was given more as a work for hire situation, which made it so much more exciting. And you really do have to think out every little piece of how this thing is going to translate to the screen in a way that's challenging and fun and rewarding. And so, yeah, I think, in the films I've written, the next films I'm going to make are all heightened and all genre. I grew up really into surrealism and magical realism. And so I just kind of think one of the greatest joys of cinema is getting to take the world we live in and heighten it and play with it and chop it up and all those things. Yeah. So I don't do a lot of really grounded stuff. So that means that I will inevitably be doing a lot of VFX.
We'll clear our schedule.
Absolutely, yeah. That means you guys had a good time together. That's good. So take us to then this script in particular for Freeze. Like you just mentioned, you like magical realism. You're drawn to it. It's satire. You want to play with kind of the world that you've created. And so, did you always know, obviously, that VFX was going to be a part of it, and kind of how much VFX you were going to use when you started the project?
Well, when we talked about on our other interview about how Freeze came to be on the page, and it was very much an organic process of catharsis of just like putting my own life experiences onto the page. And so I don't think I actually was thinking necessarily in the first few drafts about which of these things I'm writing are VFX. So I'm sure there's, quite a few overambitious things I ended up trimming out in the end when I realized what they entailed. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess, there's different types of reasons in surrealism and magical realism to warrant VFX. So Freeze is essentially trying to get you into the psychology of being a woman running out of time to have kids and what it does to your psychology. So in any kind of psychological film, as are, all of Kubrick's films and some of the greatest directors of all time, is like, how do you put people into that psyche? And for Freeze, I really wanted the VFX to be motivated mostly by her sort of losing her marbles over time and like things you would see and kind of hallucinate almost because your baby fever was out of control or because you were in the space of this woman running out of time. So yeah, that's kind of the motivation for them in this film. And I think in all the films I've written, like just very much trying to use cinema and visual effects to get you into the shoes of somebody whose life might be different than yours, or maybe it is like yours, but it's just another way to get into anxiety and other things that we experience. if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in a way, you've definitely answered the question, but also I appreciate kind of your thought process around it too. Like, again, you were very deliberate about it, which I really appreciate. And I think it actually shows in the work, right? It's very effective in the film. And in some ways, like it's surprising in some instances, and yet it also is like very natural, which I hope audiences see that as well. So this brings me to the wonderful team that we have here. I would love if you could each introduce yourself and actually talk about kind of what you worked on the film to kind of orient our viewers to kind of what you specifically did on Freeze. Keely, can we start with you?
Yeah, of course. Hi, I'm Keely. I'm the short form executive producer at Ingenuity Studios. My particular role in Freeze was a producing role. So it was especially fun because we got to get together, David and myself, with Maya and her team, and talk through, I want to say as early as the script phase, and just kind of like brainstorm ideas and try to get her vision and bring some of our ideas to the table as well. And then I sort of just saw the job through from start to finish in terms of more of an organizational standpoint and a communication standpoint with Maya and bringing that back to our team. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And David, what about yourself?
I'm David Levensfeld. I'm the founder and one of the VFX supervisors at Ingenuity. So my role at the film was engaging with Maya early with Keely and at the script phase, doing scope planning, shot planning, project planning, and supervising on set a bit with another supervisor, Kim. And then generally overseeing the work as it went through the studio.
Great. And Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matt Robillard. My job for this film was as a compositing supervisor. So I was kind of the next level below Dave and Keely, overseeing our team of 2D compositing artists. So yeah, once they did all the planning and all the organizational stuff, we got all the actual shots, and then we were kind of the last step before the shot is complete, and we send it back out to Maya and her team.
Fantastic. And Christian.
Hi, I'm Christian Klein. I'm a senior artist in Ingenuity's motion graphics department, and we did the fertility tracking app that the character Joy is seen using on her phone. And we also did the Wildcard Productions logo at the beginning of the film too.
Oh, awesome. So I have like some nuts and bolts, like total curiosity questions for you. So you're talking, I'm gonna play the role of like, I don't know how this process works, and I would love to, ask some questions about that. So going back to Keely and David, how you mentioned, and Maya, this place where you come in at the script stage and you start to kind of collaborate there around these visual effects. Like Maya, what you think you want, and then you bring on this other team. Can you just talk through like what that's like, kind of the expectations, where like how ideas are exchanged, and where you see kind of VFX like really enhancing something, but versus like making sure that the filmmaker also has a say in their vision? And this feels very broad, but I'd really love to know like those beginning meetings and kind of what takes place there from the filmmaking perspective.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead. No.
I was just going to say really quick that, and then you guys should be the ones talking really, that I don't know how it works with everybody, but for me, I'm not senior enough in VFX to know, for example, that like one shot might take 300 hours, that I've created a vision for something really cool, right? And then something else might take a couple hours. So having them look at the script early on is like so essential. And I would recommend any filmmaker do that and figure out who the VFX people are early on, because if you don't plan really early on, then you're in post-production, you're going to be screwed. So I was like really lucky to connect with David and Keely and be able to have them look at the script before we'd even basically planned the shoot, to make sure nothing I was saying was absolutely unachievable.
Oh, great.
To piggyback that, it's It's true that VFX is not post. Like, it's done in post, obviously, but it's not. It's part of the whole planning process, and we always get appreciated when we have a filmmaker that either understands that or knows it from prior projects or whatever, or knows enough to know that they don't know that and engages us in that world. Because there's nothing worse than like getting on a project or getting into something and realizing that, wait a minute, we should have been involved from the start. You could have avoided this whole mess, and it cost you more money or it cost you a bigger headache or whatever. So that was really, really great, and we're appreciative that Maya did that. Then the unsexy stuff about this is shorts are hard, right? They're generally not the most funded thing in the world. They're all passion projects. So you're working with an auteur that has a vision and knows exactly what they're doing. It's not like a studio where they have, exactly, and they're a system. And so you do have to, and again, this is the unsexy stuff, but you have to really value engineer what you're doing, and work with the filmmaker to make sure that that's happening. And that all happens early. I forgot the second part of the question.
Well, it was just, again, to me, you kind of answered it, which is about that collaborative process. Like, I do want us to get into the space too about how, once you guys do start working on it, what is that dialogue like between a filmmaker and very specifically on this project? Like, Maya, how involved were you in this, like in all stages, and kind of, what that development really looked like?
Right. Yeah, I mean, going back to what I was saying about like it being a passion project, but also a short, and you have to figure out what the filmmaker wants and why they want it, and not figure it out, but have that conversation, and present either alternatives or list out your sacrifices for getting that type of work done. I remember specifically on this project, one of the bigger effects was the beard growing thing.
Your mother will get over it eventually.
We talked about how to do it practically, or we talked about like having the actor shave and all of these things. And we realized, I think very quickly, how important of a shot it was to Maya. So we did it. We just like bit the bullet and did the most expensive version of that shot, but I think in the end it was worth it. But there are a million of those choices, and you have to communicate that it is a choice, and that, hey, we're going to go to bat for you on this particular shot. So let's think of some other places that we might want to save, or do the awful wording, but do the cheaper version or the more economic version of something.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's to me, again, that's like really interesting, and hopefully like very valuable to anyone listening to this, right? Especially filmmakers, like this process, knowing kind of what you want as a filmmaker, being able to articulate it, but then also working with a team that kind of respects what you're looking for, but also is being real about, budget and kind of needs of the story. Who is it, Matt? Were you the one that worked on the beard? Speaking of that shot?
Yes, I was involved in the making of the beard.
You can tell us anything about the making of the beard?
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Well, it's in your mind, adding a beard growing on someone is, oh yeah, you just do it in CG. Everyone can probably just throw out that catchphrase of, oh, just do it in CG. But you forget that there's no real life reference for a beard growing in full time. So it's a lot of conversations between my department, the compositing side, and Paul, who was our effects guy, on, okay, well, what's actually achievable in CG? What can you guys do? And, how can we as a compositing department help? I remember one of the biggest things that we had issues with was matching the dialogue on the effects side. Our animators did the best they could, but obviously it's not exact. And so there's a lot of back and forth with that. And, eventually it was us trying to help out with that and make sure it stuck and make it look good, I guess.
Well, it looked very good. I'm curious. I'm curious to your point of, I like your comment about like, no one in real life sees a beard grow like that. So I am curious, again, from anyone here on this team that wants to talk about like research or process, or where you get inspiration from when it comes to like, you're essentially creating something new, but you have a visualization for it. But but you have to create it also new within the world that you've been given, say from Maya. So I'm curious if there's any instances you have from the filmmaking process where you're like, oh, what I looked to or got researched from.
I specifically can't speak on this. This is maybe more of a Dave question for the reference we got for any of the beard or any of the sort of surrealist stuff.
I can kind of pop in here.
Okay,
I will
yeah.
say that on our early conversations, Maya was really great about providing some references just from things you see in movies and commercials and whatever throughout the years, or even internet references of just something that's like similar, has a similar motion or grows at a similar rate. Anything like that to provide to us that we can all look at visually and talk about it. Obviously, it's not going to be exact because the ideas in this film were very unique. But I think it's good to have at least visual reference points that we can all kind of sit in a room and talk through and talk about what we like about it, what we don't like about it, so that there's like a starting point for that conversation. And that's something that we were able to do, and that Maya and her team were really great about providing us, so that we could kind of further that conversation and all get on the same page pretty early on.
Great.
Yeah.
And David, did you have any comment to that on kind of just like on references or research or kind of approach when you're working with a filmmaker?
Yeah, wait, hang on. I was going to put my own beard on. Can you see that? I think the goatee is the most they have here.
Yeah, you can see goatee.
These types of, specifically with the beard thing, is like these types of effects are generally hard to research because obviously things like that don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the stuff you find, and this is actually kind of like a pet peeve of mine, but a lot of the stuff you find is like time lapse photography.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like grass growing or whatever they can train a camera on and reasonably keep it on for a long period of time, and that stuff tends to look like really frenetic and really crazy, and like it drives me crazy. So a lot of times I try to go and talking about what the idea is and whatever in my research, try to go the opposite, so and which is like a very smooth thing. And that's kind of what happens with the beard shot, is it grows out and it has like a physicality and catches some wind that is like the opposite of the like growing crazy time-lapse effect.
Yeah.
So, in trying to find those references, sometimes you find something, you're like, don't do this. That's the best you can do.
Maybe that in itself is like also helpful, right? For all of us in the creative field. Like, this is the thing I know I don't want. So maybe that's a good place to start.
Definitely. Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good example too of where it was such a collaboration between my original idea and what their artist did, is because I'm glad you brought up the wind. Because I think like I always wanted it to be like that scene was supposed to be like a fairy tale in which all the books in the bookstore are fairy tales, but the fairy tale is like the sign is Ye Old Man Bookstore, and it's her dad mansplaining her. So that entire scene is about men telling stories and telling women what to do, basically. That's the meaning of that scene at the subtext of it. And then all the production design, everything has little Easter eggs about that. And so with Father Time, I think I sent you a lot of references from like old storybooks of Father Time beards, because I wanted it to feel like Father Time from a storybook and not like Star Trek. Like there were some things I didn't want it to feel like, but then, and then the other thing that's really interesting is like the detail with which you have to, like, how fast do you want it to grow? Do you want it to hit the bottom X at the bottom of the frame or complete at the bottom? I mean, you just wouldn't even believe all the decisions, 1,000 decisions for one shot, that when you write that shot in the script, you're not thinking all that stuff and then you have to figure it out. But the wind was completely their idea and is my favorite part of that shot, because it's just like the little wispy, like it just adds so much. It makes it funnier, honestly. So yeah, we would get VFX shots back from Ingenuity, my producers and I, and be like, oh my God, this is so good. Like it just totally blew our expectations every time. And part of that was like the little twinge here and there of ideas or creativity that their artists brought to the shot. So I really appreciated that like collaborative nature of it. I love it when people throw ideas at me instead of it just being like exactly some prescription I provide.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to say that just it adds to the trust, you know, it seems like between both of your teams, right? Of knowing where you want to go with it and then trusting the kind of artistry, the skill sets of the people that are working behind it. Which takes me to, you know, Christian, I know you mentioned that you had some hand in the app, the making of the infertility app. And I'm curious, like, if you want to talk through a little bit of like that process, like, or, you know, kind of like research approach. And also, you know, I can call it like also being a man doing an infertility app that's going to be a female driven, written, directed, starring movie. Just like elements with that, if you wouldn't mind expanding on.
Yeah, that was definitely a situation where a lot of great reference was provided, various screenshots from different existing apps. And I pretty much had a very clear path in terms of matching the look and feel and color palette of those existing apps. And I think we only went through a couple of iterations of just the best way to visually represent the story point that was happening there of her time running out. I think we tried like, you know, a literal timer, maybe like a bar running out before we settled on like the line graph going down. And I definitely got a fun sense of like the sort of dark, even though I was only working on that one shot, I could definitely feel like kind of like the dark comedy tone coming through. Like when the request for the balloons came in, I was like, wait, what? But yeah, so yeah, it's great when you get a sense that there's a lot of creative vision, even for just a quick phone screenshot.
Absolutely. And did you, again, maybe this goes back to you, Maya, as well, like for that, did you have something in mind? You gave references and then we're also like surprised kind of by, you know, what was given back to you for this one?
Yeah, I mean, me and my friends, all women that I know, use apps like this, but the apps are more designed like around your cycle and like when you are fertile. And I thought, obviously, since Freeze is a dark satire, like, wouldn't it be funny if the app had a warning when you weren't fertile? And how would it like do, like, you know how apps and sounds and everything's designed to like make us addicted to it, like the sound when you get a new text like makes your dopamine a surge. So it's like, what if the app was like trying to like tell you your fertility's done but still wanted to be happy, you know? And it's like surprise, it's your fertility clip. And so I just thought, so I think a couple of the screenshots I sent might have been like the app I had. And of course the app I have doesn't have a fertility cliff warning on it, but it does have, you know, other various warnings on it. So yeah, I just thought, wouldn't it, the meta layers here of the satire, I thought, wouldn't it be funny if the app was designed by men and it was telling women about their fertility? But no, I think it's like only, you asked me a question in our other interview about satire in general as a genre. And I think if you take reality and then just like skew it and heighten it slightly, it's satire, a lot of times the best satire. And so that app he designed is like only, you know, and teeny bit off from what we're actually looking at every day.
Right. And yet to that point, I'll just like call out and hope anyone watching this too, like what might seem like a very small scene is actually, like, again, very layered. It's like it hits a comedic layer. It hits a point you get kind of like you're very much visually drawn there as a viewer. And then you go like, oh, it hits all these things. And it's also making a statement. So I just feel like wanting to address that, like all these moments are really important to, again, even in a short film in particular, like where it's like the economy of form is at play. So you have to do things in such a short time frame. I would love to hear from the team and also Maya kind of about some of your, if these are your favorite moments, but kind of like any other favorite visual effects moments from the film or any stories behind in the creation of them.
I have a quick story that's just piggybacking on the fertility app conversation. I remember one day I was walking over to the graphics department and I think it was Christian and maybe Alex that was helping to collaborate on the creation of that graphic. And they were like, Keely, come here, look at our phones. And I think you guys had both downloaded like a handful of fertility apps onto your own phones, and you were like looking through them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yep.
Her Instagram advertising was off for the next.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Any other few moments? Sorry, Maya, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I would love to hear you. I mean, obviously we have artists who worked on specific shots, so I don't know, but the miniature babies we have to at least touch on, because I think, I mean, from my standpoint, holistically, that was the most involved, because we had to cast babies. We had to figure out how we were going to shoot the babies. Then we had to also obviously film the plate and the shots of Kel Mitchell with the egg carton. And then we also had to composite rotoscope, right? We had to roto in each of those little babies. And he's, picking them up and moving them around. I mean, that was like very involved from a VFX person on set for two shoots, miniature babies on a green screen, and Kel Mitchell and Nora. And then, in post work, like a lot of work there. And that was probably the shot I was the most attached to in it. This idea that like suddenly you would just kind of see babies everywhere as your baby fever got worse. And it's just so funny. And I don't know, maybe it's like I grew up with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or something, but there's something so funny about anything miniature when it's like, has like, it seems so real, but it's so tiny. So I don't know, I guess I want to hear what everyone else has to say, but it was, from a production standpoint, we did have to put babies in salad bowls covered in green screen material and put them on a green screen. And some of them cried, and then we couldn't pick them up because we really wanted one of the babies in the egg carton to be crying. So it's like, and they're the babies of people in the film, brought their babies to set. And yeah, it was pretty involved. And I think it's like one of my favorite shots in the film for sure.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to chime in on the baby shots, multiple shots?
I love that shot. Matt, did you comp that shot?
At some point, yes. I can't remember if I did the final version or not, but at some point, yeah. I think I did the one where Kel's like picking the baby up and bringing it over towards the pot.
We've known each other for over a decade. You're anything but crazy.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you have to use babies on set, I can only imagine how difficult it is. Because I mean, you can do all the planning in the world, but as soon as you put the baby down and start rolling, like they're the boss,
There's a whole movie about it.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
But I'm curious then too, like from a production standpoint, Keely and David, right? You talked about this pre-planning, Maya comes in going, I want this baby scene. And it's like pretty involved. I'm curious where like you guys, what you talked through in this and how you knew this was going to come together.
I think that took a few conversations, because at first we were like, can you put babies in a bowl? Like, is that okay? Will they be okay? Will they fall over? Like, we just really weren't sure what would be possible on set or not. And also, I think, David can speak more to this, but mimicking the shape of the egg carton was something that we really wanted to keep in mind, because we wanted it to look as real as it was. We still wanted it to look real. And like the babies were really in the carton. So I think that was a challenge.
Yeah. And then when we shot the egg carton too, the toothpick thing, it was like those types of things get weird. You have to describe like what you need and how to shoot it. But they were just holding like a little toothpick cross basically, so their fingers don't, when you just pretend to do it, you tend to like be a different size every time you do a thing. Or so we built little toothpick crosses for talent to pick up. But Maya knew, like from the onset, you knew, Maya, that you were going to shoot a bunch of babies and handle it that way.
Yeah, I don't know how else you would do that. I feel like in order for it to feel that real and lifelike and be funny, where all the babies are doing different things, I guess you could do CG babies. I don't know if that's an option, but yeah, it was
a bit more involved.
Yeah, you're like, that's not.
It is an option.
This is why you need to talk to them, because they're like, your idea is a bad idea.
Well, again, just coming at this from not maybe the non-production angle, I just really appreciate it because in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, CG babies seems much easier than this involved production. And you're like, no, it's not. That's not.
Man, all we do is play defense. We're like, don't do that. Don't shoot a bunch of babies.
Don't do it. I mean, to me, I first of all just want to say, like, I really appreciate everyone's time. Well, I actually don't want to cut in. Is there another scene or something that someone would like to talk about of like their favorite visual effects moment in the film? Matt, did you have anything that kind of stood out to you?
Oh, my favorite was the baby egg carton. That was my favorite scene to work on.
Yeah, it's pretty unique.
That was being worked on like when I first started at Ingenuity too. Like I walked in and I just kept seeing like this shot on the monitor like next to me and I was like, what? All right then.
That's what you're gonna want to see. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I just first want to reiterate like how lovely it is to chat with you and hear about the process of all of this, because I think for me it's just very illuminating to again see how collaborative this process can be and should be, especially given, when with so much like kind of talent at play and making sure that it all comes through. It looks seamless. I think all the work that you did was, looks really wonderful. And again, it does exactly, hopefully, Maya, what you wanted it to do, because from a viewing perspective, it definitely came through.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough how grateful I am that Ingenuity came on board. And it was like fun to work with them, which is always important when you're doing a short, because if it's not fun and cool and funky, then why are you doing it? Because it's definitely not what you do to make a ton of money is make short films, let me tell you, from anyone's perspective. It kind of making Freeze like really renewed my faith in this industry and business and filmmaking, because it is hard. And then I wrote something that people believed in, and so many people, including Ingenuity, got behind it. And it's like a miracle every time a film is made, I swear. But this has just like been such a greatest experience of my life. I'm so happy with it. And I mean, the VFX just blew me away. You have a hope for what you think it'll look like, and then when it comes out 20 times better, you're just like, wow. It was kind of mind blowing, and just makes me want to do so many more films with VFX in them, because it's like, wow, the magic we can create is like, it's pretty exciting.
Thank you. That was very sweet of you to say.
I mean, it's the truth. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for your time this afternoon and this lovely conversation. For anyone watching, we hope that you enjoy Freeze. If you haven't yet watched it, you have lots of things to look forward to. And if you have watched it, we hope you watch it again, because now you're going to look a little bit closer at the wind through the beard, I'm sure. Thank you again, and we'll hopefully talk to you all soon. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Thank you.